Dominance MMA has been subpoenaed by a Nevada state judge in regard to the ongoing UFC Antitrust Lawsuit, and that means that Ali Abdelaziz might finally be getting his comeuppance. So let's break it down. Here's the story so far. The UFC Antitrust Lawsuit claims that the UFC has used a variety of scummy tactics to pay its fighters less than what they should have, and also to gain control of the MMA market. So as time has gone on, there have been a bunch of developments. Most recently, the UFC was ordered to pay over $375 million, and that money was spread out to over 1,000 fighters. But the antitrust lawsuit is made up of multiple different cases. These settlements only cover a portion of the total lawsuit. The first part involved fighters from 2010 to 2017. This second part involves fighters from 2017 to the present day. Who's really grown their business significantly over the last 8 years? Ali Abdelaziz. Dominance MMA, Abdelaziz's management company, has been officially subpoenaed, and they legally have to hand over tons of documents as well as electronics, anything that has information pertaining to contract negotiations, emails between Dominance MMA and the UFC, and specifically, anything that shows that the UFC pressured fighters into signing contracts. It flew under the radar for a little bit, but Dominance MMA in August filed an objection saying that they didn't want to or couldn't release these documents because their company is, quote, too small, and gathering these documents would waste valuable time allocated towards business. They argued that their company is technically only made up of one person, Ali Abdelaziz, and then there's around 10 or so independent contractors. The people in charge of the lawsuit offer to pay compensation for missed work or pay for the hiring of someone to come in and aid them in the collection of the subpoena materials. Dominance MMA repeatedly refused, claiming that if the plaintiffs wanted these documents, they should just go directly to the UFC. So after a lot of deliberation, Dominance MMA has been court-ordered to hand over all of these materials by November 18th, 2025. Now, if they're digging around, they're going to find more than what they bargained for because Dominance MMA currently has between 8% and 12% of the UFC roster under its umbrella, and there have been quite a few controversies regarding Ali and Dominance MMA. For example, Ali has been involved in some minor fight fixing in the PFL. He worked as their matchmaker for a couple of years until they had to get rid of him because of other lawsuits. He's a 15-year friend of Dana White, so it does seem like there could be some conflict of interest for sure, and especially if you're looking for instances where the UFC pressured fighters into signing contracts, you're probably going to find examples of Ali being complicit. This isn't even an isolated occurrence with Dominance MMA because Dana is friends with all of the other biggest names in MMA management as well. First Round Management, the Kawa brothers, and here's Dana with Malky in 2013. Here's Dana with Tiki Gozin of Arsenal Sports Agency. They've been friends for multiple decades. Even guys like Jason House of Iridium, Audie Adder of Paradigm Sports have all talked very highly of Dana, so now we've covered the top 5 biggest MMA management companies, and they all have close, sometimes very personal ties with Dana White. It shouldn't really take court orders and rocket scientists to figure this kind of thing out. Looking into Dominance MMA could very well lead us to a point where even more companies are being investigated. Things could snowball very easily. If pressuring fighters into fighting is the parameter that needs to be proven, we already have video footage of Hunter Campbell heavily persuading Aljamain Sterling to sign the contract against O'Malley, all while Aljamain Sterling's manager Tiki Gozin sits in the background and lets it happen. This is from a documentary about the behind the scenes of the UFC that the UFC okayed. If they were willing to show us this, imagine the shit that they hide. And I have been covering this for almost a year now. I wish I was really good at predicting fights. I wish that I knew a ton about the technical intricacies of MMA. I wish I was really adept at that sort of thing. But, unfortunately, my knowledge base is just who trains where and who manages who. That's the shit that I have on lock, and I have to use my gifts to the best of my abilities. The minute that you really start putting these kinds of things together is the moment where the sport and any sort of logic that it may carry falls apart. Suddenly, certain fighters getting more opportunities that they maybe don't quite deserve, and fighters retaining rankings despite not winning in years, starts to make sense. And you can continue to pull at those sorts of threads indefinitely, and you will find corruption and collusion, and the pressuring of fighters into fighting will be the least of their problems. There's always this portion of the MMA fan base who takes this idea a little bit too far, though. They think that MMA is fake, or it's rigged or something like that, which is undoubtedly untrue. But the UFC is for sure putting their thumbs on the scales here and there, whether it's home field advantage, trying to get a fighter to make a quick turnaround, or making sure that someone with bad cardio gets to avoid a 5-rounder in favor of a 3-rounder. It's the little things that end up making a difference and swaying the odds in a certain fighter's favor. There's no question that that's happening, and the only question I'm not sure about is if Ali's going to turn on the UFC like he did the FBI. Because that's what happened over there, man. The FBI was paying him hundreds of thousands of dollars for information, but allegedly he turned on them and kept giving them bad information, so they cut him loose. Ali is willing to throw people under the bus to save his keister, so on some level it would not surprise me, but then, where's he gonna go? There's no lateral moves available if Ali Abdelaziz rats on the UFC, so that might lower some percentages here and there, but it doesn't rule it out entirely. The shitty thing about the first lawsuit payment from earlier is that the UFC gets to deduct the payments as a business expense, and the fighters receiving the money, A, have to pay taxes on it as though they've won the lottery, and B, depending on how much money they get, it might actually push them into a higher tax bracket, and it might cost them money. So the point of a case like this is to either push the UFC into criminal court or have them settle like they did with the earlier case. Settling is probably more likely because even though I am relatively sure about the fact that the UFC is pressuring fighters into signing contracts, usually the goal of things like this is to just get a bunch of money. For the well-being and legitimacy of the sport, it would obviously be better if they took this to the ends of the earth, but it's their case, and I'll settle for seeing footage of Ali Abdelaziz at a deposition. A huge shout out to A. Feldman MMA on Twitter, who aggregated a bunch of this information. He's a great follow. I'll link his account in the description below so you can check it out for yourself. Also, a bunch of other sources are there as well. Let me know what you think about the lawsuit and Dana White's connections to so many MMA managers in the comment section below. Like, comment, and subscribe for more MMA content. Shout out to Proletarian Gothic Vinny and Stu for being vampiric enjoyers. Thank you all so much for watching. Rat's gonna rat, and have a good time.